Hello girls and boys, and welcome to another of our little legend story times. And today it's taken from the Barefoot Book of Princesses, and it's about the Sleeping Beauty. So if you're all sitting comfortably, we'll begin. Long ago there lived a king and queen who were sad because they'd no children. One day the queen was sitting and weeping in her bath when a frog hopped out of the water and said, "Dear queen, don't cry so. Before a year is over, a daughter will be born to you." The frog's words came true. The queen gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The king was so happy that he gave a grand party. He invited his family and friends and the most important people in his kingdom, the fairies who had the power to grant wishes. He wanted his baby daughter to receive their special blessing. Now there were 13 fairies in the country, but because the king had only 12 golden plates for his very important guests, he sent out only 12 invitations. When the party was at its most merry, the herald blew his trumpet and called out, "Silence for the most excellent fairies!" And one by one the fairies came forward to lean over the princess's magnificent cradle and breathe their blessings upon the baby. So there's the queen, and there's the little frog, and then there's the little baby daughter, and the fairies are all lining up to breathe their blessing on her. And look how happy the king and queen look, boys and girls. Don't they look so happy? Very, very happy. The first fairy said, "Beauty." The second fairy said, "Riches." The third fairy said, "Joy." The fourth fairy said, "Wisdom." The fifth fairy said, "Love." The sixth fairy said, "Pleasure." The seventh fairy said, "Innocence." The eighth said, "Truth." The ninth said, "Delight." The 10th said, "Trust." The 11th said, "Gentleness." The 12th fairy was about to speak when suddenly the doors of the palace flew open. A great wind filled the hall and blew out the candles, so that the only light came from the 12 tips of the fairies' wands. In through the doors strode the 13th fairy, who had not been invited. She was purple with rage at being forgotten. Without a greeting to a soul, she leaned over the baby's cradle and in a ghastly voice said, "When she is 15 years old, the princess will prick her finger on a spindle and fall down dead." Then she swept out of the hall again. The king and the queen wrung their hands in anguish, but the 12th fairy came forward and said, "Fear not, I have still to grant my blessing. The princess will not die. Instead, she will fall into a deep sleep that will last for 100 years. This last blessing cheered the royal couple and gave them hope. But just to make sure no harm could come to the princess, the king ordered that all spindles in the land should be destroyed. The princess grew up to be all the things that the fairies had wished upon her. She was fortunate, lovely, sweet-natured and kind, and everyone loved her. Her parents gave her everything that a girl could desire, but whenever she left the castle, many servants accompanied her to make sure that she never found a spindle. The princess grew tired of always being with her servants. She longed to be alone and to have an adventure. So after promising on no account to leave the castle, she dismissed her servants and went exploring. She explored the castle dungeons, which were dark and empty, except for a mouse. She peered down the well in the kitchen courtyard and saw her own reflection. She went and sat on her father's throne in the throne room and tried on her mother's crown. She discovered a funny map in the library. She tried on some old-fashioned clothes that she found in a cupboard. She had a lot of adventures, boys and girls, didn't she? So there we have when she was first born. And who was this came in, boys and girls? You're right, the wicked fairy. Oh, she does look very evil, doesn't she, boys and girls? And she cast a spell, didn't she? But the other lovely fairy was able to help, wasn't she? And so whenever she put the princess, she said that they would just fall into a deep sleep. How many years was it for, boys and girls? Call out. That's right, the 100 years, that's right. So the princess is now grown up a good bit, isn't she? And what age is she again? She's 15, that's right. And this is some of her adventures. She's there looking in the courtyard, looking down at her reflection into the well. So she's having a lot of adventures. Where else did she go? Yeah, she went into the crown, into the throne room, didn't she? And she tried on her mummy's crown. So she's having a lot of good adventures. So she threw cherry stones down from the balcony onto the soldiers' helmets, and when they shouted at her, she ran laughing up a long, narrow staircase in a lonely tower. In the door at the top of the winding stairs was a rusty key. She turned the key with both hands, and the door fell open with a creak. Inside sat an old woman, spinning flax into thread. "Good day to you, old woman," said the princess. "What is that you're doing?" "I'm spinning," she replied. The princess stared at the spindle in the old woman's hands, and danced and spun so merrily. She'd never seen anything like it. "What is that thing in your hands that hums and spins?" she asked. "This is my merry dancer who makes flax into thread," said the old woman gravely. "Oh, do let me try that," begged the princess, her fingers itching. And before you could say 24 blackbirds, the princess had pricked her finger on the spindle and instantly fell upon the floor in a deep sleep. And as the magic worked, so the spindle flew out of the princess's hand and danced all over the castle. Wherever it spun, everything stopped and everyone fell asleep. The king and queen slept in their council chamber, the soldiers slept on the battlements, and the servants slept in the kitchen. Everyone in the castle fell into a deep sleep. The flies slept on the walls, the horses in the stables, the pigeons on the roofs, the dogs under the tables, the mice in the dungeons. Every creature within the gates fell asleep. The fire in the hearth stopped in mid-flame, the clocks in the halls, the leaves on the trees, even the flag on the most high tower was still. Everything fell into a deep slumber. And all around the castle there grew up a great spiky hedge of briars. It grew and grew until the battlements were hidden from sight. The years passed, and the people from the country round about often spoke of the beautiful sleeping princess in her castle of thorns. The story of Briar Rose spread to every land, and many people tried to find the way through the spiky hedge to see if the story was true. Many brave adventurers tore their hands apart on the thorns and even died. Then one day, 100 years later, a prince heard the story of Briar Rose. His heart burned inside him when he thought of the beautiful princess and all her family and her servants asleep within the enchanted hedge. He made up his mind to rescue her. So there we have, boys and girls, and who's this? Who's this? What's she got in front of her? The spinning wheel, that's right. So this is the old lady, isn't it? Yeah, you're right. And the princess, she made her way up, and this is her. She's walked through the room, into the room, and she's met the lady. And then what happened? What did she do, boys and girls? You're right. She touched the spindle. And what happened then? She went into a sleep, didn't she? And can you remember some of the other people who went to sleep along with her? Call out to me some of the other. There was little animals as well, weren't there? Yeah, the little mouse. Yeah, the little mice. And who else? The little dogs. And even you're right, the pigeons up on the roof. They all fell asleep. And what grew up then, boys and girls? What grew up round the castle? That's right, the big hedge. And so how many years passed? The 100 years passed, yes. And the prince, there's a prince who's going to try and seek any help. So when the prince saw what a dark thicket of briars surrounded the castle, his courage nearly failed him. But as he grew closer, the hedge began to burst into flower. Great pink, gold and white roses opened, and the spiny thorns withdrew as he approached. He was able to walk through the hedge without hurt, but it closed up behind him as he went into the castle gates. Then he made his way through the castle. He saw with wonder that although 100 years had passed, there was no dust anywhere. There was no sign of age upon the sleeping forms which stood or lay where they'd fallen so long ago. The prince saw the fire that still flamed but did not give heat, the cook still stirring the pot, the soldiers slumbered at their posts, and the mouse just about to eat the cheese. Nothing breathed or moved, not even the clock. The only thing that hung in the air was the scent of roses. He found the narrow winding staircase. The scent of roses was even stronger here. He entered the little tower room where the princess lay, lovely and still as one who is dead. Her skin, lips and hair were the colour of rose petals, white and pink and golden. He touched his lips very gently to hers. Very slowly her breathing rose and fell like one who is asleep. And very, very slowly she opened her eyes and looked with delight upon the prince. And as the princess woke up, so all the castle woke up. The pigeons took flight from the battlements, the leaves began to dance and quiver, the horses whinnied and kicked in their stalls. The fire flickered into life, the servants began to bustle about their work, the king and queen raised their heads from the table in the council chamber, and the flag on the tower fluttered once more in the wind. The hedges of the briars shrank magically back into the earth, and everything was as it had been before. The prince and Briar Rose were married and lived happily, and the king gave them a set of 13 golden dishes for a wedding present. So there they are, girls and boys. That's the little princess, and she's sleeping there, and suddenly she gets woken up by the prince, doesn't she? And look, who's this? Call out to me. That's the king and queen, that's right. And they are so, so happy. And all the rest of them have all woken up. Can you just imagine the big yawn and the big stretch that they would give, boys and girls, after 100 years being asleep? They must be ready for a big party again now. And they had the big party, didn't they? The Briar Rose and the prince got married. And what did they get as a wedding present? The gold plates, that's right, boys and girls. So they're all awake now and able to enjoy the princess being awake again now. 100 years was a long time, boys and girls, wasn't it? It was a long, long time to be asleep. A long time. So I hope you enjoyed our story today, boys and girls. It's from the Barefoot Book of Princesses, and it was the Sleeping Beauty. So until we see you for another day, boys and girls, it's bye for now from Little Legends. Bye for now, boys and girls.